The auction lot read decorative fauna, small, biddable, non-hazardous, and Dr. Cora Matsokis almost walked past it. She had been on Kethaval trade station for 11 weeks, long enough to learn that the livestock auctions on level 6 ran every third cycle, that the auctioneers were Tessavari, tall, membrane-winged, fastidious about categories, and that the categories were wrong approximately 40% of the time. Non-hazardous, in Tessavari classification, meant that the animal had not bitten anyone during intake processing. Biddable meant it had not tried to escape. Decorative meant the auctioneer did not understand what it was for. The lot in question was a wire mesh enclosure, 2 meters square, sitting on the auction floor between a tank of bioluminescent eels from Terek 4 and a glass terrarium containing something with too many legs and a faint smell of cinnamon. Inside the wire mesh, lying on a folded shipping blanket with her chin on her paws, was a Border Collie. Cora stopped. The dog was female, approximately 3 years old, with a classic black and white coat, jet over the skull and shoulders, white blaze down the chest, white socks on the front paws, one brown eye and one blue. She was lean, clean, healthy. Her ears were pricked forward, tracking the auction crowd with the fixed, steady attention that Cora recognized from every working farm she had ever visited on Earth. The dog was not sleeping. She was not stressed, she was watching the crowd the way a surgeon watches a waiting room, cataloging, sorting, filing. Cora turned to the intake manifest clipped to the enclosure's frame. The document was in Tessavari Trade Standard, which she could read poorly and speak worse, but the relevant details were printed in Coalition Common, Species, Canis lupus familiaris. Origin, Earth, Class 12 Deathworld. Acquisition, Salvage, Recovery, Derelict Human Cargo Shuttle, Terek Corridor, Cycle 4417. Handler, none registered. Temperament, docile. Purpose, unknown. Reserve price, 12 credits. 12 credits, less than a meal at the station's cheapest food stall. The previous lot, a pair of Kalori singing lizards whose primary talent was producing a noise that sounded like a broken pressure valve, had sold for 300. Cora read the manifest again. Salvage, recovery, derelict shuttle, no handler registered. The dog had been pulled from a dead ship in the Terek corridor and processed through Kethaval's animal intake system like cargo. Nobody had claimed her. Nobody had identified her breed, her training, or her capabilities. The Tessavari auctioneer had looked at a medium-sized Earth canine with a calm disposition and filed her under the only category that fit. Pretty, harmless, sellable to someone who wanted a novelty pet. The auctioneer, a Tessavari named Prosek, 7 feet tall with folded membrane wings the color of dried leaves and a voice like gravel dragged across sheet metal, was currently accepting bids on the singing lizards. The lizards were shrieking. Half the auction crowd, mostly Vrisek traders and a handful of Pellic merchants, had their auditory membranes sealed in pain. Prosek appeared unbothered. Tessavari ears were vestigial. Cora waited. She was the only human on the auction floor. She was the only human on level 6. She was, as far as she knew, one of 4 humans on Kethaval trade station, and the other 3 were dockworkers who spent their shifts in the cargo bays and their off shifts in the human quarters annex on level 2. Cora's official title was Coalition Interspecies Veterinary Liaison, which meant she treated alien animals on a station that did not entirely trust her to treat its plumbing. She had been assigned to Kethaval as part of Earth's Interspecies Cooperation Initiative, a diplomatic program whose primary function, as far as Cora could determine, was to place individual humans on remote alien stations and see what happened. What had happened in Cora's case was mostly paperwork. She had examined 47 animals in 11 weeks, treated 19, performed 3 surgeries, and been consulted on 0 policy decisions. The station's senior veterinary officer, a Kreshari named Dian Commissar Olvethi, communicated with her primarily through memos that began with, "While your credentials are acknowledged," and ended with "This matter does not require Earth method intervention." Ulvetha's staff called her the Earth Ornament when they thought she was out of earshot. She was not always out of earshot. The singing lizard sold for 410 credits. Prosek moved to the next lot, the wire mesh enclosure, the dog. Lot 47, Prosek announced, wings rustling as he consulted his data pad. Decorative fauna, Earth origin. Species designation, Canis lupus familiaris. Salvage recovery, no provenance. Docile temperament. Suitable for display, companionship, or residential ornamentation. Reserve price 12 credits. The dog looked at Prosek. Her ears rotated forward. Her eyes tracked from Prosek's data pad to his face to the crowd, scanning the arc of bidders with the systematic sweep of someone counting exits. 12 credits, Prosek said. Do I hear 12? Nobody moved. The creature is from Earth, Prosek added, as if this were a selling point. In the Tesavari framework, it was Earth animals were exotic, visually striking, and their survival on a Class 12 Deathworld gave them a certain cachet among collectors who liked to display dangerous-looking things behind very thick glass. But this animal was not a jungle cat or a raptor or a venomous serpent. It was a medium-sized dog with mismatched eyes and a calm expression. It did not look dangerous. It looked patient. 12 credits, Prosek repeated. A Vrisek trader in the third row raised one of her forearms lazily. 12. 12 to the Vrisek merchant. Do I hear 15? Nobody moved. Prosek's membrane wings twitched in annoyance. He was going to close the lot. 12 credits sold, and the dog would go home with a Vrisek trader who would put her in a display cage in a gift shop, or sell her forward to a collector, or release her into one of the station's lower levels when she proved insufficiently decorative. 20, Cora said. Every head in the room turned. The Vrisek trader's compound eyes swiveled to fix on Cora, processing the sight of a human bidding on an Earth animal at an alien livestock auction. 20 to the human veterinary liaison, Prosek said, and Cora noted that he knew exactly who she was. Do I hear 25? The Vrisek considered, then folded her arm. 12 credits had been an impulse. 20 was not worth arguing. Sold, Prosek said. Lot 47 to the human, 20 credits. Cora walked to the enclosure. She crouched in front of the mesh door. The dog looked at her. Not at her hand, not at her feet, not at the food pouch on her belt, at her face. The dog's eyes were steady, focused, and carried an expression that Cora had seen exactly once before on a champion herding dog at a trial in New South Wales. I have been waiting for someone who knows what I am. Cora opened the mesh door. The dog stood up, shook once, a full body reset, ears to tail, and walked out of the enclosure. She did not bolt. She did not cower. She stopped at Cora's left knee, sat, and looked up at her, waiting. Cora clipped a lead to the shipping collar around the dog's neck and walked out of the auction hall. The dog heeled without a command. Prosek's voice carried behind her. Next lot, Tarek Sandweaver's 6 units, excellent for textile demonstration or... The auction doors closed. Cora and the dog walked into the corridor, and Cora's shift was not supposed to start for another 2 hours, and she had 20 credits less than she'd had that morning, and she had absolutely no plan for what happened next. Okay, she said to the dog. Let's find out who you are. The dog's tail wagged once, precisely once. Cora named her Pip. The first 72 hours were diagnostic. Cora ran Pip through every assessment protocol. She had a physical exam, behavioral baseline, cognitive response, socialization metrics, stress indicators. The results told a story that the Tesavari salvage manifest had missed entirely. Pip was not a pet. She was not a companion animal. She was not decorative fauna. She was a trained herding dog, Border Collie, working line, with the dense muscle, alert carriage, and obsessive focus that the breed had been refined for over centuries. Her teeth were clean, her coat had been maintained, Her paws showed wear consistent with regular work on mixed terrain. Whoever had owned her had worked her. The derelict shuttle she'd been pulled from had probably been a livestock transport. The Terek corridor was a common route for agricultural supply runs between the outer colonies and the inner trade hubs. Pip had lost her handler somewhere in the black between worlds, and the Tessavari intake system had processed her the way it processed everything it didn't understand. It had given her a category that sounded right and moved on. Cora kept Pip in her quarters for the first 2 days while she filed the adoption paperwork, a 17-page document that required sign-off from 4 different station departments, none of which had a category for human veterinarian adopts Earth working dog from salvage auction. The Kreshari administrative officer who processed the form had stared at it for 3 minutes, stamped it with a designation that translated roughly as other, and returned it without comment. During those 2 days, Cora learned 3 things about Pip. First, the dog did not chew, scratch, pace, or vocalize. She lay on the floor of Cora's quarters, chin on paws, and observed the room with the steady attention of a night watchman on an uneventful shift. Second, she responded to herding commands, the old ones, the ones Cora had learned on sheep stations outside Adelaide. Away to me sent her left. Come by sent her right. That'll do brought her back. The dog's body changed when she heard them. The stillness broke, the muscles loaded, the eyes sharpened, and then she would look around the room, find nothing to herd, and settle again. Third, the dog was watching the station through the viewport, not the stars, the foot traffic on the atrium walkway. She tracked every passing alien with the same scanning pattern she would have used on scattered livestock, left to right, near to far, fastest movers first. She was reading the station like a paddock, and she was waiting for someone to say go. On the 3rd day, Cora brought Pip to the veterinary clinic. The clinic was on level 4, a long, bright, sterile space with 12 examination bays, a surgical suite, a quarantine wing, and a staff of 11, all of whom were Kreshari except for Cora. Diyen Commissar Olvethi ran the clinic the way a conductor runs an orchestra, precisely, impatiently, and with the unshakable conviction that every musician who was not Kreshari was fundamentally misreading the score. Olvethi was waiting when Cora arrived. He was 8 feet tall, narrow-bodied, with slate-gray skin that had the texture of weathered stone, and a face dominated by 3 horizontal islets that opened and closed independently depending on which spectrum of light he was processing. His lab coat was immaculate. His posture radiated the kind of authority that does not need to raise its voice, because it has never once considered the possibility that it might not be obeyed. He looked at Pip. Pip looked at him. The dog's tail was still, her ears forward, her gaze steady. "You purchased a Deathworld animal at the livestock auction," Olvethi said. His voice was a low, rasping baritone, the Kreshari vocal structure producing consonants like tearing paper. "I did. And you have brought it to my clinic. She goes where I go. My contract specifies accommodation for 1 Earth companion animal." Olvethi's middle islet narrowed. He had read her contract. He knew she was correct. The animal will remain in the designated rest area during work hours. It will not enter examination bays. It will not interact with patients. It will not disrupt the operational rhythm of this facility. Understood. Olvethi turned and walked away. Pip watched him go with the unblinking focus of a dog that has just identified the most important person in the room and filed that information for later. Cora set up a bed for Pip in the clinic's break room, a small space off the main corridor with a table, 4 chairs, and a window that looked out onto level 4's central atrium. The atrium was a long, tree-lined walkway with artificial daylight panels and a shallow water feature running its length, and through the window Pip could see the foot traffic of a working station. Kreshari staff in lab coats, Pellic maintenance workers, Vrisek cargo handlers, the occasional Tessavari merchant whose wings brushed the ceiling. Pip lay on her bed and watched. She watched everything. Cora noticed it on the first morning. The dog's eyes tracked individuals as they passed the window, not randomly, not idly, but systematically. Left to right, near to far, fast movers first, slow movers second. The same scanning pattern a herding dog uses in a paddock full of sheep. Find the ones that are moving wrong. Find the ones that are about to move wrong. Find the outlier. It was instinct. It was also, Cora realized by the second morning, extraordinarily precise. The problem arrived on the fourth day, and it arrived loud. Deathworld trade station processed livestock. Thousands of animals per cycle, bred, transported, sold, transported again, flowing through the station's holding facilities in a constant stream of biological noise. The holding pens were on level 6, adjacent to the auction floor, and they were managed by the Deathworld Agricultural Division, which operated on a system of categories, protocols, and filing structures that had not been updated in 11 years, and that could be summarized in a single principle. If the animal fits the pen is correct. The problem with this principle was that animals do not always fit their pens. On the fourth morning after Cora acquired Pip, a Deathworld livestock handler named Senek appeared at the veterinary clinic's front counter. He was out of breath, or the Deathworld equivalent, which involved rapid wing membrane flutter and a slight chemical discharge from the scent glands along his jaw that the station's ventilation system was going to complain about for the next hour. "The holding pens are in crisis," Senek said. Ulvethi, who had been reviewing a pathology report at his desk, did not look up. "Define crisis." "Cross-contamination event. Pen Block 7. We have a mixed consignment, 42 calorie grazing ungulates, 18 Vrisek tunnel borers, and an unknown number of Terex sand crawlers, and the sorting system has failed. The ungulates are in the tunnel borer pens. The tunnel borers are in the sand crawler enclosures. The sand crawlers are," Senek paused, "everywhere. This is an agricultural management problem, not a veterinary one. Dien Commissar, there have been injuries. 7 ungulates are showing stress fractures from confinement in undersized pens. 2 tunnel borers have burrowed into the pen flooring and we cannot extract them. And the sand crawlers have entered the ventilation system." Ulvetha's upper eye slit opened fully. This meant, in Kreshari body language, that the situation had graduated from beneath my concern to requiring my attention without enthusiasm. He stood. "How long has the sorting system been offline?" 6 hours. The automated sorting gates use biometric categorization, species, mass, thermal signature. The system updated its firmware overnight, and the new parameters are," Senek searched for the word, "wrong." "Wrong how?" "It is classifying everything as calorie ungulate. Every animal that passes through the sorting gate is routed to the ungulate pens, including the tunnel borers, including the sand crawlers, including a Deathworld handler who was standing too close to the gate when it cycled." Ulvethi walked. Cora followed, because injuries meant her job, and because Senek was radiating the particular chemical signature that Deathworld produce when they are genuinely frightened rather than merely inconvenienced. Pip followed Cora, because Pip followed Cora everywhere, and because no one had told her not to, and because the dog had been lying in the break room for 4 days watching everything move and nothing had required moving, and she had been patient, and she had been still, and now something was happening, and her ears were forward, and her weight was on her front paws, and her eyes were doing the thing. They reached level 6 in 7 minutes. The holding pens were chaos. Pen Block 7 was a modular facility. 20 pens arranged in a grid, each pen a 3-meter square enclosure with adjustable walls, automated water dispensers, and a sorting gate at each end that was supposed to read the animal's biometric tag and route it to the correct pen. The gates were cycling randomly. Animals were moving between pens in a slow, confused shuffle that had produced, over 6 hours, a complete scramble. The Calori ungulates, stocky, six-legged grazers with flat heads, and the temperament of especially phlegmatic furniture, were packed into pens designed for the much smaller tunnel borers. Two of them had wedged themselves into a corner and were making a low, grinding vocalization that meant either distress or hunger, and that the Tessavari handlers could not distinguish between. The tunnel borers, eyeless, cylindrical, warm-blooded, with rotating jaw plates designed for soil displacement, had been rooted to the ungulate pens, and finding the pens unsatisfactory, had begun burrowing through the composite flooring. Two were already out of sight. A third was halfway through the floor, its rear end protruding from the surface and rotating slowly. The sand crawlers were everywhere. They were small, each one the size of a human fist, segmented, fast, and equipped with hooked feet designed for purchase on loose terrain. They had escaped their enclosures, climbed the pen walls, entered the ventilation grating, and were now distributed across approximately 300 square meters of ceiling, dropping occasionally onto the heads of Tessavari handlers who were already having the worst morning of their careers. 8 Tessavari workers were in the pen block. 2 were attempting to manually sort ungulates by physical appearance, which required them to stand between animals that weighed 4 times what they did and that were, despite their phlegmatic nature, becoming agitated. 3 were on their knees trying to extract tunnel borers from the floor. 2 were standing on stepladders swatting at sand crawlers with catch nets. 1 was sitting against a wall, wings folded, staring at nothing, in what Cora recognized as the universal posture of a worker who has decided that the situation has exceeded his job description. Alvethi surveyed the scene. His 3 islets opened in sequence, upper, middle, lower, which meant he was processing the scope of the problem and was not pleased with his findings. Senek, how many animals are incorrectly penned? All of them, Dean Commissar. Every animal in Block 7 is in the wrong pen. How long will it take to sort them manually? Senek's wings fluttered. We have been trying for 4 hours. The ungulates resist handling. The tunnel borers cannot be extracted without cutting the floor, and every time we catch a sand crawler, 3 more enter from the vents. Estimated time. If the sorting gates remain offline 2 days, possibly 3. And the animals with stress injuries cannot be treated until they are separated. The injured ungulates are pinned by the healthy ones. Alvethi turned to Cora. His expression was not warm, it was never warm. But there was something in the set of his islets that Cora had not seen before, a fractional widening of the lower pair that, in 11 weeks of careful observation, she had catalogued as the Cresciari equivalent of "I do not have a better option, and I am aware of this." Dr. Matsaukis, you are familiar with Earth methods of animal management. I am. Do you have a method for sorting 60 mixed-species animal in a failed automated system? Cora looked at the pen block. She looked at the ungulates. She looked at the tunnel borers in the floor. She looked at the sand crawlers on the ceiling. She looked at the 8 Tessavari handlers, half of whom had sand crawlers on their shoulders. Then she looked down at Pip. The dog was standing at her left knee, rigid. Not tense, rigid the way a coiled spring is rigid. Every muscle engaged, every nerve alive, weight forward, ears locked, eyes fixed on the pen block with an intensity that made the nearest Tessavari handler take a step backward. Pip was watching the animals, all of them at once. Cora had seen this look before. She had seen it on farm dogs at dawn, standing on a ridge above a paddock of scattered sheep, the moment before the handler says go. The look was not aggression. It was not excitement. It was calculation. The dog was reading the pen block the way a chess player reads a board, every piece, every possible movement, every outcome all at once, all processed in a brain that had been bred for exactly this problem for 300 years. I might, Cora said. But you're going to have to trust me. Alvethi's middle islet closed. Specify. Open every pen gate, all of them, at the same time. The silence that followed was comprehensive. Senec's wing membranes went completely still. 3 handlers turned to look at Cora. The Tessavari sitting against the wall stood up. "You are asking me," Alvethi said, "to release 60 unsorted animals into an open pen block?" "Yes." "Into a space occupied by 8 handlers, 3 veterinary staff, and an unknown number of escaped sandcrawlers?" "Yes." "Your reasoning?" Cora unclipped Pip's lead. The dog did not move. She stood at Cora's knee, vibrating with focus, but she did not move. She was waiting for a command. She would wait for a command until she died, because that was what she was, and Cora understood this the way she understood gravity, as a fact that required no justification. "Her reasoning," Cora said, and pointed at the dog. Alvethi looked at Pip. Pip did not look at Alvethi. She was watching the pen block. "Your animal is a herding breed," Alvethi said. "I have read the species file. Their function on Earth is the movement and sorting of domesticated livestock." "Correct." "These are not Earth livestock. They are 3 distinct alien species, none of which have ever encountered an Earth canine. The ungulates are 6-legged. The tunnel borers are subterranean. The sandcrawlers are invertebrate." "I know." "And you believe a 13-kilogram Earth dog can sort them?" "I believe she's been sitting in a break room for 4 days watching everything on the station move, and I believe she already knows where every animal in this room should be." Alvethi regarded her. He regarded the dog. He looked at the pen block, at the handlers who had spent 4 hours achieving nothing, at the tunnel borers in the floor, at the sand crawlers raining from the ceiling. His lower eyelids closed, then opened. Kreshari resignation. "Open the gates," he said. Senec hesitated. "Dien Commissar." "Open the gates, handler Senec." The gates opened. 60 animals had access to 300 square meters of open floor. The ungulates milled. The tunnel borers sensed the vibration change and began to reverse out of the floor. The sand crawlers froze on the ceiling. Cora knelt beside Pip. She put one hand on the dog's shoulder. The muscle underneath was taut as a bowstring. "Away to me," she said. Pip launched. There was no better word for it. The dog did not run, she deployed. She went left, fast, low to the ground, and within 4 strides she was at the far wall of the pen block, and every animal in the room knew she was there. The ungulates felt it first. They were herd animals, 6 legs, flat heads, but fundamentally prey-shaped, and 300 million years of evolution across 2 different worlds had produced the same response to the same stimulus, a fast-moving predator-shaped thing at the edge of the group. They bunched. 6 that had been scattered against the far wall pulled together. 12 more in the center pen area shuffled toward them. The herd instinct transcended species and planet of origin. Something was moving them, and they moved. Pip circled wide, dropped low, and the ungulates shifted right. She stopped. They stopped. She moved 2 steps left. They moved 4 steps right. The geometry was precise, surgical, wordless. The dog was not chasing them. She was pressuring them, a slight lean, a fixed stare, the weight of her attention pushing them the way wind pushes grass. One ungulate broke from the group. It was a juvenile, smaller than the rest, and it bolted left, toward the open corridor mouth that led deeper into level 6. Pip adjusted without hesitation. She peeled away from the main group 2 strides, cut the juvenile's line, and dropped into a crouch so low her belly nearly touched the deck. The juvenile stopped. It turned its flat head toward her, all 6 legs locked, and Pip held it there. 1 second. 2. The stare was absolute. The juvenile's hindquarters pivoted, and it trotted back to the group as though it had simply changed its mind. Nobody had told the dog to do that. Nobody had pointed at the juvenile. She had seen the break coming before the animal moved, read the weight shift, the turned head, the fractional gap between it and the group, and she had answered before the question finished forming. Senek's wing membranes rippled. He turned to the handler beside him, but the handler was already backing up, instinct overriding professionalism, because the Tessavari hindbrain was registering what the forebrain had not yet processed. The dog was a predator, and the predator was working. The first Tessavari handler to understand what was happening was a young one, Verith, a junior livestock technician who had been on the station for 6 months. He watched the dog move 7 ungulates into pen 1 without touching any of them, without making a sound, without breaking eye contact with the lead animal, and his wings went completely rigid. "She is sorting them," he said. His voice was very quiet. "She is sorting them," Cora confirmed. Pip moved, the ungulates moved. In 90 seconds, the first cluster of 14 ungulates was in pen 1, packed correctly, facing the water dispenser calm. The remaining 28 took 2 minutes more. Pip split them into groups. She chose the splits, not Cora reading some quality in the herd structure that told her which animals belonged together and which did not. 2 groups of 12. 1 group of 4 that she handled last, with extra care, because those 4 were the stressed ones, the ones with the visible tremor in their forelegs, and the dog moved them slowly, gently, with a pressure so light it was almost courtesy. Pip had never seen a Kalari ungulate before this morning. She did not need to have seen one. She read the group the way a conductor reads an orchestra, not the instruments but the spaces between them. The gaps, the hesitations, the animal that is about to break left because its weight is shifting. She did not need to know the species. She needed to know which way they were about to move, and she knew it the way she knew how to breathe. The tunnel borers were harder. They did not have eyes. They navigated by vibration, thermal gradient, and chemical trace. A border collie stare, the eye, as handlers called it, meant nothing to a creature with no visual cortex. Pip adapted in 9 seconds. She stopped trying to stare them into compliance. Instead, she moved her paws. Quick, deliberate taps on the composite floor, left paw, left, right, producing a percussive pattern that the tunnel borers felt through their lateral vibration sensors. They responded, not with fear, with orientation. They turned toward the vibration source, read it as a directional cue, and followed. Cora watched, and her hands were shaking, and she did not know why. Pip tapped. The tunnel borers followed. One by one, she walked them into pen block 4, the pens with reinforced flooring and substrate bedding, and they went. The 2 that had burrowed completely through the floor were harder. They were out of sight, somewhere beneath the composite deck plating, and the Tessavari handlers had been preparing to cut the flooring with plasma tools to extract them. Pip lay down, flat on the floor, belly pressed against the composite, and she began a new pattern, slower, deeper taps with both front paws, a bass note rhythm that traveled through the material the way sound travels through water. Cora watched the floor. For 10 seconds nothing happened. Then a section of composite 2 meters from the dog bulged slightly, settled, and bulged again. The first tunnel borer surfaced, jaw plates still, body oriented directly toward the dog. The second followed 30 seconds later, emerging from a crack between floor panels with the unhurried deliberation of a commuter exiting a train. Both followed the tapping to pen block 4. Verith was writing on a data pad. His stylus hand was shaking. When Cora glanced at the screen, she saw that he was not writing a report. He was drawing a diagram of the dog's movement pattern, annotated with timestamps and species response notations. He had been documenting the entire operation. "Why are you recording this?" Cora asked. "Because no one will believe me if I don't," Verith said. Nobody had taught Pip any of this. There was no chapter in any herding manual on Earth about managing eyeless subterranean aliens. The dog did not care, because the dog did not need a manual. The dog needed a problem that required sorting, and she had found one. The sandcrawlers were last. They were on the ceiling. They were small, fast, hooked, and they were not going to respond to staring or floor tapping or any form of pressure that involved being below them. Pip stood in the center of the pen block and looked up. The sand crawlers looked down. There were 31 of them, distributed across 9 ceiling panels. Pip sat. She sat directly under the largest cluster, 11 sand crawlers packed into a ventilation grill junction. She sat and she was still. Completely, absolutely still. No movement, no sound, no vibration. The dog became a fixed point in a room full of chaos. The sandcrawlers watched her. Cora understood before anyone else. She's not hurting them, she said. She's giving them a reference point. They navigate by movement differential. They flee from motion and orient towards stillness. She's being the stillest thing in the room. It took 4 minutes. The sandcrawlers descended. One by one, then in clusters, they came down from the ceiling, moved across the floor, and converged on the still, warm, steady point that was Pip. They reached her and stopped, arranged in a loose ring around the dog's body, hooked feet anchored to the floor, segmented bodies motionless. Pip looked at Cora. Cora opened pen block 6. She walked toward it, and Pip stood and walked with her slowly, and the sandcrawlers followed, because the stillest thing in the room was now moving toward a place that smelled like substrate and warmth, and they followed because that was what sandcrawlers do when they find safety. Total elapsed time from Cora's command to the last sandcrawler entering pen block 6, 9 minutes. 60 animals, 3 alien species, 1 13-kilogram earth dog, 9 minutes. The pen block was sorted. The ungulates were in their correct pens, calm, grazing at the dispensers. The tunnel borers were in reinforced enclosures, burrowing contentedly into fresh substrate. The sand crawlers were clustered in a heated pen, motionless, anchored, settled. 8 Tessavari handlers stood in the cleared central floor and did not speak. Pip walked back to Cora and sat at her left knee. Her tongue was out. Her tail moved once, a single sweep across the floor. She looked up at Cora with both eyes, the brown one and the blue, and the expression on the dog's face was the same expression she had worn in the auction enclosure, except now it carried a different weight. I have been waiting to do this. Ulvethi was standing at the pen block entrance. He had watched the entire 9 minutes without moving. His 3 islets were fully open, all 6 membranes retracted, which Cora had never seen before, and which she was fairly certain no human had ever seen before, because it was the Kreshari expression reserved for events that did not fit into any existing category. He walked to where Cora was standing. He stopped. He looked at Pip. "Your animal," he said, "is not decorative." "No. Your animal is a working professional." "Yes." Ulvethi's lower islets pulsed once. He reached into his lab coat and produced a data pad. He wrote something, pressed his thumb to the authorization field and handed it to Cora. She read it. It was a personnel addendum. Under her name, Dr. Cora Matsaukis, Coalition Interspecies Veterinary Liaison, a new line had been added. Auxiliary Staff, Level 6 Livestock Division. Classification, Operational. Rank Equivalent, Specialist. The name on the addendum was not Cora's. It was Pip's. "The title is provisional," Ulvethi said, "pending a formal capability assessment, which I expect you to schedule at your earliest convenience." She just sorted 60 alien animals in 9 minutes. The capability assessment is procedural. The paperwork takes longer than the demonstration. He turned and walked away. 3 steps later he stopped. He did not turn around. "Dr. Matsaukis." "Yes." "The break room is no longer an appropriate workspace for a specialist-ranked staff member. I will have a proper station set up in the livestock division by end of shift." He paused, "with a bed." He left. The pen block was quiet. Cora sat on the floor next to the dog. Pip leaned into her shoulder, not hard, just enough. The warm, steady pressure of a working dog that has done its job and is now resting against the person it trusts, and the weight of it was 12 kilograms of muscle and bone and 300 years of breeding, and the simple, unshakable fact that this dog had been made for exactly this, and someone had thrown her away for 12 credits, and nobody on the station had known what they were looking at. Cora put her arm around Pip's shoulders. The dog sighed. It was a small sound, barely audible over the hum of the pen block's ventilation system, and it meant nothing except that the dog was tired and content and here. The word spread. It spread the way information always spreads on a trade station, through supply corridors and mess halls and the quiet, efficient gossip network of dock workers, maintenance crews, and administrative staff who have nothing to do during transit gaps except talk. By the next morning, Senek was at the clinic. He stood at the front counter, wings folded tight against his back in the Tessavari posture of formal request, and asked whether the earth-herding animal could be made available for a sorting problem in Pen Block 12. Different species, different consignment, same failed sorting system. Cora brought Pip. The problem was a mixed lot of Pelic aquatic grazers and Tessavari ground feeders that had been crossbred for 11 hours. Pip sorted them in 6 minutes. She had never seen either species before. She adapted her method for each low, slow pressure for the aquatic grazers, who spooked easily, quick, darting runs for the ground feeders, who responded to motion. She did not need instruction. She read the animals and moved them. By the third day, 3 different livestock handlers had submitted formal requests through Senek's office. By the 5th day, the requests were coming from other levels. A quarantine officer on level 3 wanted to know if the dog could move a group of escaped veterinary subjects back into containment without triggering their defensive reflexes. A cargo supervisor on level 8 had a loading bay full of mixed livestock that needed to be sorted into species-specific transport containers for outbound shipping, and his team had been working on it for 2 days. Pip handled both. The quarantine subjects, small, armored, prone to rolling into defensive balls when touched, responded to Pip's stillness technique. She sat. They unrolled. She moved. They followed. The quarantine officer, a Pelic named Dr. Tesrin, watched the dog resolve a 2-day problem in 22 minutes and filed a formal report. The executive summary was 1 sentence. The Earth animal achieved in 22 minutes what our specialized containment protocols failed to achieve in 48 hours. The cargo bay sort took 40 minutes for 112 animals across 5 species. Pip worked each group with a method she invented on the spot, reading their responses, adjusting her pressure, finding the angle that moved them without frightening them. The cargo supervisor, a Vrisek named Torakhit, stood at the bay's observation window with his upper arms crossed and his lower arms hanging loose, the Vrisek posture of total cognitive surrender. "How many species exist in the Coalition Livestock Registry?" he asked Cora. "Hundreds." 412. Torakhit watched Pip walk a cluster of slow-moving filter feeders into a transport container using a serpentine approach pattern the dog had developed in approximately 6 seconds. "I would like to see how many she can learn." Cora stopped being surprised. She stopped trying to explain the mechanism. She stopped prefacing every demonstration with "this is what herding dogs were bred for on Earth." The staff stopped asking. They watched. They watched a 13-kilogram black and white Earth dog walk into a room full of alien animals she had never seen before and sort them with a precision that made their automated systems look like random number generators. And they stopped asking because the answer was obvious, and the answer was that the dog was better at this than anything they had. By the end of the 2nd week, Pip had a schedule. Senek posted it outside the livestock division office, a printed sheet, updated daily, listing the pen blocks, levels, and transport bays where specialist Pip was assigned. The schedule was in Tessavari trade standard. Someone Cora suspected Verith, the young handler, had added a small illustration of a dog in the corner. The illustration was not accurate. It had 6 legs. But it was well-intentioned. Pip also had a routine. She walked with Cora from their quarters to the clinic at 600. By 6:30, she was at her station in the livestock division and the handlers knew her. They did not pet her. They understood in the way that working people understand working animals that she was not there for companionship. She was there for the job. When the sorting requests came, Senek would brief Cora, Cora would brief Pip, though the dog read the room faster than the briefing could be delivered, and Pip would work. She did not tire of it. She did not slow down. Border Collies do not get bored with work. They get bored without it. By the end of the third week, Pip had a file. Alvethi created it. Cora found the file on the veterinary clinic's shared database under a new category that had not existed before: interspecies operational animal, Earth origin. The file contained Pip's biometric data, her behavioral assessments, a log of every sorting operation she had performed, with species, duration, success rate, and a field-labeled method notation that contained entries like vibration pulse herding, novel adaptation and stillness anchor technique, no known precedent, and a capability rating. The capability rating was level 3 specialist, the same rating as a trained veterinary technician, the same rating Alvethi's own staff held. There was another entry at the bottom of the file, added 3 days later. It was under supplementary observation, Deyen Commissar Alvethi, and it contained a single paragraph. The animal does not sort by species, mass, or biometric signature. The animal sorts by need. During the Pen Block 7 operation, the animal identified 4 ungulates exhibiting elevated stress indicators and moved them last, with reduced pressure. During Pen Block 12, it identified 2 aquatic grazers with preclinical gill inflammation and separated them from the healthy population before the veterinary team completed their intake scan. The animal's diagnostic accuracy is not understood. It is also not disputed. Cora read the file twice. Then she closed it, sat in her clinic chair, and pressed her palms against her eyes, and the dog was sleeping under her desk with her chin on Cora's boot. And the weight of that, the simple, ordinary weight of a sleeping dog on her foot, was the heaviest thing she had felt in 11 weeks on this station. On day 19, someone objected. His name was Provisional Director Kelesh, and he ran the Tessavari Agricultural Division with the methodical certainty of a man who had never been wrong about anything, because he had never permitted the question to be asked. He was 9 feet tall, with wings the color of old parchment, and a voice that carried the acoustic properties of a formal reprimand even when ordering lunch. He arrived at the Livestock Division office unannounced, read the schedule on the wall, and summoned Senek. "You have assigned livestock sorting duties to an Earth animal," Kelesh said. "To Specialist Pip, yes, Provisional Director." "An animal cannot hold a specialist designation. An animal is livestock. Livestock does not sort livestock." The designation was authorized by Deyen Commissar Alvethi. The Deyen Commissar oversees veterinary services, not agricultural operations. Under my authority, animals are sorted by automated biometric systems, which are being repaired, or by trained handlers, not by other animals. He turned to Cora, who had been standing in the doorway with Pip at her knee. Pip was watching Kelesh. The dog's head was tilted slightly, ears forward, eyes tracking the Tessavari's wings with the same systematic attention she applied to everything. "Dr. Matsaukis, I have reviewed the operation logs. Your animal has performed sorting functions on 11 occasions in the past 15 days. During that time, the automated sorting system has been offline for repairs, which has created an apparent dependency on your animal's services. That dependency is temporary. When the system is restored, the animal's services will no longer be required." "The system has been offline for 3 weeks, Cora said. "The repair estimate keeps extending." "The estimate is irrelevant. The system will be restored, and the animal will be returned to its designated rest area." In the interim, I am suspending the animal's operational schedule until a formal review of its activities can be conducted by the Agricultural Division's Compliance Board. How long will the review take? Standard review period is 45 days. And the livestock that needs sorting in the meantime? Kelesh's wings folded, a sharp, decisive motion, will be handled by trained personnel as it always has been. He left. Senek looked at Cora. Cora looked at Pip. Pip looked at the door through which Kelesh had departed with an expression that was either indifference or professional assessment, and with Border Collies it was difficult to tell the difference. The sorting suspension lasted 4 days. In that time, manual sorting took 9 hours per consignment instead of 9 minutes. 5 animals were injured during handling. The automated sorting system was brought online for a test run on the 3rd day and classified a Tessavari technician as a Kelori ungulate for the 2nd time in a month. It was taken back offline. On the 4th day, Kelesh appeared at the Livestock Division office at 700. He walked directly to Cora's station, where Pip was lying on her bed, chin on paws, watching the pen block through the observation window. "The formal review is concluded," Kelesh said. His voice was flat. That was fast. The Compliance Board convened an emergency session. Their finding is that the animal's operational record demonstrates capability consistent with specialist-grade performance. The suspension is lifted. He looked at Pip. The dog looked at him. For 3 seconds, the Tessavari Provisional Director and the 13-kilogram Border Collie regarded each other across 2 meters and several hundred million years of evolutionary divergence. "The schedule," Kelesh said, "may be restored." He turned and walked away. His wings hung loose at his sides, the Tessavari posture of a man who had just lost an argument with an animal. The incident that changed everything happened 4 days later. Kethaval Trade Station received a live transport shipment from the Vrisek homeworld. A diplomatic consignment, high value, containing 44 Vrisek breeding stock animals destined for a colony agricultural program. The animals were called Kethrin, large, dense-bodied quadrupeds with thick gray hides, blunt skulls, and a metabolic quirk that made them extraordinarily valuable. They produced a symbiotic microbial culture in their gut flora that could terraform soil chemistry on barren colony worlds. Each Kethrin was worth more than most of the ships that docked at Kethaval. The transport docked at 400. By 4:30, the containment team had a problem. The Kethrin were in distress. 12 of the 44 were refusing to eat. 7 were showing signs of respiratory irregularity. 3 were lying down and would not stand. The transport veterinary officer, a Vrisek named Tal Kasset, had been treating them for the full 3-day transit and had run out of interventions. Alvethi was called to level 6 at 4:45. Cora was called at 4:47. Pip came with her. The dog had been sleeping under Cora's desk, her standard position during off hours, chin on Cora's boot, breathing in the slow, measured rhythm that meant the dog was resting but not fully asleep. One ear always rotated toward the clinic's front corridor. When the call came and Cora stood, Pip was on her feet before the chair finished rolling back. She did not need a command. She read the change in Cora's posture, the set of her shoulders, the speed of her movement, the particular way she reached for her field kit instead of her data pad, and she knew. Something was wrong. Something needed sorting. The transport hold was a cavernous space, poorly lit, smelling of recycled atmosphere and animal musk. The Kethrin were enormous, each one standing nearly 2 meters at the shoulder, with broad flat backs and short, thick legs. They were packed into transport stalls that were too small for comfortable movement, and the distressed animals were visibly agitated, shifting weight, vocalizing in low, grinding tones, refusing feed from the automated dispensers. Tal Kasset met them at the hold entrance. He was a Vrisek, 8 feet tall, dark blue chiton, 4 arms, 2 folded, 2 gesturing with controlled anxiety. The microbial cultures are degrading, he said. If the Catherine remain in distress for another 12 hours, the symbiotic flora will destabilize. The animals will survive, but the colony program loses 3 years of breeding work. The Vrisek Council has made it clear that this outcome is not acceptable. Ulvethi examined the first animal. Cora examined the second. Both came to the same conclusion independently. The Catherine were not sick. They were stressed. The transport had been too long, the stalls too tight, the atmospheric mix slightly wrong. The animals needed space, calm, and a gradual decompression from transit conditions. Move them to the large holding paddock on level 6, Cora said. Open space, natural lighting, fresh atmospheric mix. Let them decompress. The paddock is occupied, Senex said. He had arrived without being called because by this point he appeared wherever Pip appeared. 32 Calori ungulates waiting for outbound transport. Sort the ungulates out first. That will take 9 minutes, Cora said, give or take. It took 7. Pip cleared the paddock of 32 ungulates in 7 minutes, routing them into the overflow pens with the silent, focused precision that had become routine. The handlers opened the paddock gates, and the Catherine were guided in. They entered the open space and stopped. 44 Catherine, standing in a paddock designed for mixed species holding, with overhead daylight panels, fresh atmospheric circulation, and twice the floor space they had had in 3 days. They stood still. They breathed. The grinding vocalization faded to a low hum. But they would not settle. The distressed animals, the 12 that had refused food, the 7 with respiratory irregularity, the 3 that were lying down, remained agitated. They milled at the edges of the paddock, bumping into each other, vocalizing, unable to find the calm that the open space should have provided. They need a center, Cora said, and she was talking to herself, but Ulvethi heard her. Explain. Herd animals orient around a fixed point. A leader, a landmark, something stable. In transit, the stall walls provided that. In open space, they don't have a reference. They're adrift. She looked at Pip. Pip was standing at the paddock gate, watching the Catherine. The dog's ears were forward. Her weight was centered. She was reading the room. The dog, Ulvethi said. She can be their center. She sits in the paddock, stays still, and the herd orients around her. The Catherine outweigh her by a factor of 150. They won't touch her. She doesn't smell like food, she doesn't smell like a threat, and she's the stillest thing they've ever seen. Herd animals don't follow size, they follow calm. Talcasset's commissary clicked. You are proposing to place a 13-kilogram earth predator in a paddock with 44 irreplaceable breeding stock animals. I am proposing to give them the one thing your transport couldn't, a reason to stand still. Ulvethi looked at the Catherine. He looked at the dog. He looked at Cora. Do it, he said. Cora walked Pip into the paddock. The Catherine watched them, all 44, 88 dark eyes tracking the human and the small black and white animal at her side. Cora stopped in the center of the paddock. She sat on the ground, cross-legged, and Pip lay beside her, chin on paws, body relaxed, tail still. The dog breathed, slow, steady, visible in the rise and fall of her ribcage. The paddock was quiet. The nearest Catherine, a large female with a scarred shoulder, took one step forward, then another. She lowered her blunt head and sniffed toward Pip. The dog did not flinch. She did not look up. She breathed. The Catherine exhaled, a deep, resonant exhalation that vibrated the floor plates. She lay down, 3 meters from the dog facing her, and she lay down and was still. The second Catherine followed. A bull, the largest animal in the consignment, nearly 3 meters at the shoulder, with a scar across his muzzle that suggested he had opinions about most things. He walked to the center, stopped, and looked down at Pip with an expression that Cora would have called skepticism if she were willing to anthropomorphize a Vrisek ungulate. The dog did not react. She did not look up. She breathed. The bull snorted once, a sound like a pressure valve releasing, and then he folded his legs beneath him, lowered his enormous body to the floor, and settled with a thud that Cora felt through the soles of her boots. Tall Cassette made a sound that might have been a word but came out as a click. His compound eyes swiveled to Olvethi. That male has not lain voluntarily in 9 days. He has injured 2 handlers. Olvethi did not respond. He was watching the paddock. Then the third Catherine followed. Then the rest came in clusters, 4s and 5s, shuffling into the open space around the comm center, lowering themselves to the ground, pressing their broad backs against each other, their eyes half closing, their grinding vocalization fading to silence. The 3 that had refused to stand reversed their position. They stood, walked to the center, and lay down with the rest. In 11 minutes, all 44 Catherine were lying in a loose ring around a small black and white dog, who had been sold at auction for 12 credits, and whose paperwork listed her purpose as unknown. Pip did not move. She lay in the center of a ring of animals that collectively weighed more than a transport shuttle, and she breathed, and her eyes were half closed, and her tail moved once, and the ring held. Cora sat beside her and did not move either. Tall Cassette checked the biosensors after 30 minutes. Respiratory rates had normalized in 39 of the 44 animals. After 60 minutes, all had stabilized. The 12 that had refused food were accepting feed from handheld dispensers. The microbial cultures were holding. The colony program was intact. He walked to the paddock railing where Olvethi was standing. Both of them looked at the center of the ring, the human sitting cross-legged, the dog with its chin on her knee, 44 Catherine arranged around them in concentric circles, breathing in a rhythm that matched the dog's. I have never seen a herd orient to an animal 1/100th its size, Tall Cassette said. Olvethi did not answer immediately. He was writing on his data pad. What are you entering? Tall Cassette asked. A method notation. I am recording the technique. What are you calling it? Olvethi's stylus paused. He looked at the paddock, at the dog, at the human. The Still Center Protocol, he said. Earth origin, no known precedent. He entered it into the operational database, authorized it with his personal clearance code, and classified it as a standard veterinary intervention. It was the first Earth origin animal behavior protocol entered into a coalition veterinary system. It would not be the last. Pip slept in the paddock that night. Cora slept beside her. The Catherine did not move. The station turned around them, 42,000 lives in motion, and in the center of a holding paddock on level 6, a small dog from a dead ship in the Terek corridor lay still, and a circle of creatures that had never seen Earth held their position around her because she was calm, and she was steady, and she was the center, and that was enough. In the morning, Olvethi was at the paddock railing when Cora woke. The Vrisek Council has requested a formal briefing on the protocol, he said. They wish to understand how a single Earth animal stabilized a herd of irreplaceable breeding stock in 11 minutes. Cora stood. Pip stood beside her, shook once, and pressed her nose into Cora's palm. What do you want me to tell them? Cora asked. Olvethi regarded her. His 3 eye slits were half open, the Kreshari expression that she had finally learned to read, not displeasure, not approval, but acknowledgement. The quiet recognition that something you had categorized incorrectly had just corrected the record. Tell them the truth, he said. Tell them we listed her under decorative fauna. Tell them she cost 12 credits. Tell them we had a word for what she is, and we used the wrong one. He paused. His upper eye slit opened fractionally wider, the one that processed fine detail, the one that noticed things before the other 2 confirmed them. And tell them the correct word is not in our system yet, but it will be. He turned to leave, then stopped a second time. The designation Earth ornament, you heard that. I heard it. I did not correct it when it was said. That was an error in my judgment. The consonants were softer than usual, the Cresciari equivalent of lowering one's eyes. The designation has been removed from station lexicon. I issued the correction this morning. He walked away. Pip watched him go, then looked up at Cora. The brown eye and the blue, both steady, both calm, both carrying the same expression they had carried in the wire mesh enclosure on the auction floor, patient, focused, ready. Cora knelt and put both hands on the dog's face. Pip leaned into her palms. The dog's fur was warm, her breathing slow, her weight solid against Cora's hands. "Good girl," Cora said. The tail moved. Once the paddock was quiet, the station turned. And in the livestock division office on level 6, a printed schedule listed a new entry for the morning, and the entry read, Specialist Pip, paddock rounds, followed by a small drawing of a 6-legged dog that did not look like Pip at all, but that everyone on the station recognized, because the station had learned. The way a station learns anything, that some things cannot be categorized until you see them work. 12 credits, that was what the auctioneer had thought she was worth. The file Ulvethi created gave the answer the station would remember: interspecies operational animal, Earth origin. Classification, specialist. Capability, unprecedented. Method, her own. But the answer Cora carried was simpler than that. It was the weight of a sleeping dog on her boot. It was a tail that moved once when the work was done. It was the look in 2 mismatched eyes that said, I was always this. You just had to see it. That was the answer. It had always been the answer. And it was worth more than 12 credits. It was worth more than 1,000. It was worth exactly what it was, a dog doing what dogs do in a place that had forgotten what that looked like.